To some, place is what's behind the little door that transports you to a new dimension, or getting lost in conversation with an artificial intelligence system, or even being on the road, surrounded by rock stars and groupies.
I have to go home.
Count the headlights on the highway.
You are home.
But for Christopher McCandless, it was the wild. Into the Wild is an adventure drama film directed by Sean Penn in 2007, set in 1992. It tells the courageous true story of 24-year-old Christopher McCandless, who decides to give away his life savings to charity and embark on a long journey to the Alaskan wilderness by hitchhiking across America. Chris's story commences with him graduating from school, and I first saw Into the Wild last year when I was beginning year 12. So I felt like I could do whatever I wanted after I graduated myself. The film also reminded me of how angry I was with the way things worked in this life. How we are being controlled by society, which makes it harder to ever feel truly free. I guess I just saw myself in Chris. I could connect with wanting to rebel against societal expectations. I also deeply resonated with the original soundtrack by Eddie Vedder, which was very stripped back and folk sounding, which only heightened the idea of being in the middle of nowhere. We learned that Chris has read many novels by great authors, and he was so deeply inspired by the morals and ethics of Thoreau and Jack London that he set out to follow in their footsteps. In one of my very first blog post entries, I had expanded upon a passage called Place, an introduction by Timothy Cresswell, where I wrote my own definition of what I think the concept of place is. When someone describes a place, there is so much more to it than just stating its location. It has meaning attached to it based on one's own personal experiences. It is clear that there was already meaning in the magic van that Chris lived in, based on the experiences of the previous people that inhabited the van. But Chris also brought his own meaning to his place, the van, where he made it his mission to act upon his ideologies. He did fulfill his desires for a short while. However, his romanticized view on nature, which spawned from reading these Western classics, caused him to underestimate the harshness of the wilderness, which led to his demise. This region of Alaska that Chris inhabits in the film is not in fact the wilderness, but rather the traditional territory of the Alutiiq, Yupik, Inuit peoples who live there. Although Chris was well read, he was very ignorant of an Indigenous worldview, which is reflective in the fact that Indigenous Alaskans are completely absent in the film. Chris was also ignorant of Indigenous knowledge of plants, which are a critical piece of Alaska's land, and this flaw caused him to accidentally consume a poisonous plant, which led to starvation. This reminded me of the week 3 reading, which was the poem Beautiful Yurok Red River Gum by Lisa Belair. Red river gums are replaced by plane trees from England, and still, the survivors watch. It makes me think about the Indigenous Alaskan peoples who were probably watching Chris from a distance, as he was trying to adapt to a certain lifestyle that they lead. He never spoke about them or wanted to educate himself on Indigenous history and their land. There was no form of reconciliation here. Chris was a privileged white male, which gave him the power to do all this, but if he was more aware and appreciative of the presence of the Indigenous Alaskans, then his entire trajectory may not have ended in tragedy after all.
I don't need money. Makes people cautious.
Come on, Alex, gotta be a little cautious. I mean, that book of yours is cool and everything, but you can't depend entirely on leaves and berries.
At one point in the film, Chris decides that he ought to go back to civilization. The lighting is so dark and cold compared to the brightness of the untamed natural world, which echo Chris's feelings about these two separate realities. There is a shot where Chris is looking through a restaurant window from the outside in, where people are laughing and drinking in their fancy clothes. He sees himself in a man who is dressed in a suit at a dinner table, and it is here when he is reminded by why he escaped society in the first place. In the Week 4 lecture, Tressa Leclerc commented that place is what space becomes through the investment of power, and it is this power that Chris is trying to escape from. While forming his own sense of power, he is living by his own rules. He loathes the hierarchy and says that money and power is an illusion.
I'm gonna be all the way out there, all the way fucking out there, just on my own. You know, no fucking watch, no map, no axe, no nothing. Just be out there in it. You know, big mountains, rivers, sky, game. Just be out there in it, you know, in the wild.
Ultimately, Chris McCandless's existential thirst was quenched by his ambitious ideologies that he was able to achieve through his own sense of power. The challenging situations and life advice he was given along the way changed him as a person. The main reason Chris went on this adventure was to be happy, but he soon realized that happiness is only real when shared.